The Nintendo Switch is fast becoming a definitive portable JRPG machine, surpassing the Vita and 3DS for both depth and quality. But with so many games to choose from, and the fact the eShop is so hard to navigate now for finding quality content, first impressions really do count, and this is where Fairy Fencer F Advent Dark Force first issues appear. That name is awful, and I skipped over the pre-order page many times just due to the name of the game alone. Now, was I wrong to judge a book by its cover, or rather a game by its cover art? Let's find out as I review Fairy Fencer F Advent Dark on the Nintendo Switch. And the story in Fencer Fairy... do you know what? I'm just going to call it Fencer for the rest of this review. The story in Fencer is actually quite intriguing, kept me hooked for most of the game. Many years ago, the vile god and the goddess waged an epic war for control of the land. With the battle ending in a stalemate, both deities are left for dead, but the weapons, called Furies, that were used during the Great War were left spread throughout the land. A growing interest in locating these weapons arose, and anyone that could find and wield a Fury was called a Fencer. To fully harness the power of the Fury, the Fencer would have to unleash the fairy trapped inside. Following so far? The fairies aren't all cute little Tinkerbells though, and through your near 30-hour journey in Fencer, you will come across all sorts of fairies, from stereotypical anime girls to balding middle-aged chefs. The fairies' sole purpose is to serve their masters, the Fencer that found and ultimately released them from the Fury, and provide the magic that they need to be a powerful Fencer warrior. What all this boils down to in terms of gameplay is travelling across the lands to find as many of the supposed 100 Furies as you can. There is one more slight wrinkle to the overall end goal of this game, and that is that you can use the fairies you've rescued to remove one of the many weapons embedded in either the vile god or the goddess. Removing all the weapons in either deity will release them from their slumber and allow them to bring their magical powers to the land once again. Interestingly, you can choose to release either deity, giving it a light or a dark path you can take through the story. Now, talking of the story, Fencer delivers the narrative via 2D talking heads rather than animated 3D models, and for the most part this works perfectly well. The characters have a slight facial animation which helps convey some personality in each of them, but what really shines here is the quality of the voice acting and writing. The story is about 90% voice acted, which is pretty impressive for the asking price, and the lines they're asked to deliver are some of the most humorous writing I've experienced in not only JRPGs but in any video game I've played in the last 30 years. Yeah, sure, some of it can be twee and sometimes a bit childish, but generally it's excellent. The main character Fang's sarcastic and selfish behaviour slowly gives way to him being a team player united behind the cause, and that's well done, and he steals many of the funniest bits right from the first cutscene. Story progress is generally driven by a character you meet in the town, who for a price will tell you where the next Fury is rumoured to be located, and off you trot. This brings us to the next clever mechanic in the game called land shaping. A lot of the locations you are given are hidden dungeons that once you are alerted to, show up on your map as a question mark. To reveal more information about the location, you have to use one of the available Furies and drive it into the ground near this location. This will reveal the details of the dungeon, but also the Fury that you use will also trigger some positive or negative buffs to your run all the time it stays embedded in the ground. You can choose to remove the Fury at any point and run through the dungeon with no additional effects applied to it. It's a nice idea and gives you another reason to collect more Furies, and selecting the best one to use to give you an advantage in a dungeon run is a nice twist. The dungeon runs remind me very much of Persona, particularly 4 Golden on the Vita. You traverse the dungeon, usually with the main aim of retrieving the next Fury on the list, though other runs may have you hunting for a monster or locating a new party member. There are some light puzzle elements at points during the dungeons, just simple things like finding keys to unlock new areas, nothing too taxing. There is usually at least one save point in a dungeon too, so you can always take a break halfway round and resume later, although each dungeon can be completed in around 10 to 20 minutes. Now, unfortunately, the performance in the Switch version when traversing the dungeons is not great. The frame rate plummets to what I'd guess to be something around about 20 frames a second, and also many areas are so dark it's sometimes nearly impossible to see where you're going. Now remember, this is a port of a 5-year-old or so game, and really feels like no care was taken to optimise it for more powerful hardware, which is a shame. Thankfully though, whilst not the best looking or performing, the issues don't directly affect gameplay. The worst of the performance issues are seen during battles with the random minions that are scattered through the dungeons, which usually would be annoying, but battles in Fencer are played out in a semi-turn based fashion. This means you're not really at a disadvantage when the frames start stuttering. Whilst combat is turn based, you are allowed to freely position your party member in 3D space between turns, and this helps particularly when you're using your special and magic attacks. These usually have an area of effect, and with careful positioning you can sometimes attack 2 or even 3 enemies with a single attack. I really love this mechanic and combat as a whole. At times, though obviously very differently presented, the combat reminded me very much of the Disgaea series. And when you build up a decent sized party, you can also unleash combinations and team attacks, and this time those reminded me of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. There are all the usual JRPG staples, like shops, materials to collect, crafting. Basically any part of JRPGs that you usually enjoy, you will find them in Fencer. But it also introduces some cool twists of its own. For example, each party member has their own achievement list to complete in dungeons, such as walking a certain distance or jumping a certain number of times. Completing these net you additional XP. So overall, I feel Fencer can sit shoulder to shoulder with some of the best JRPGs the Switch has to offer. Yes, it can be a bit rough around the edges at times, and the performance issues definitely take the shine off the package overall, but there is also so much to like here. From the beautifully drawn characters and backgrounds, the impressive voice acting and interesting and amusing story, the number of interconnected game systems and the lower than premium price, I would definitely recommend this to any JRPG fan. And I've learned a lesson to stop judging games based on their names or screenshots alone. I'm going to give Fairy Fencer F Advent Dark Force on the Nintendo Switch an excellent 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching the review, hope you enjoyed that, and please subscribe if you haven't already, really helps me out. So until next time, I will see you later.